Hello and welcome back to another full step-by-step PC build guide, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build a PC in the latest case from Corsair. This is the Corsair Frame 5000D, and I'm going to be going with an all-white build. If you see any parts you like, you find links to everything that I've used in the description. So as usual, let's make a start by taking a detailed look at the case. To remove our tempered glass side panel, there's two captive thumb screws at the back which we need to loosen. And once they've been loosened, we're able to pop the panel out from the back. Just take care it doesn't fall out, so pop your hand in underneath, and then you can lift the panel out from the front and away. Our other side panel is removed in exactly the same way. Taking a look at the back of this panel, you notice we've got a dust filter over our side intake, so we can simply pop it out from the middle, free it up at the top and the bottom to remove it for cleaning. To remove our case's top panel, we've got two captive thumb screws in the back we first need to loosen. Then there's a little handle here you can get your fingers into, and we can pull the panel backwards, and then we're going to simply be able to lift it up and away. And if we take a look at the back of this panel, you'll notice there's no additional dust filters, but as most people are going to be having the top as exhaust, this shouldn't be a problem. Taking a look at our case's front I/O, we've got a power button, we've got a combined headphone and microphone jack, we've got 4 USB Type A ports and a single Type C port. We've got quite an unusual pattern over our front panel, and this is by design. Corsair say this should improve our airflow over traditional mesh front panels. It simply pulls off, it's held on with 4 pegs, so we can grab the front panel and simply pop it off. It's good to see that behind this we've got a full-length dust filter. It simply can be popped out from the bottom and then lifted away. So with our front panel removed, you can see that Corsair have installed 3 140mm PWM ARGB fans at the front of the case. If you prefer, it is possible to mount up to 3 120 or 2 100mm fans. So the mounting mechanism at the front is a little bit unusual. So rather than securing your fans directly to the rails, they're secured with these little plastic clips. So there's one screw going into each fan and another screw holding these little clips on the rails. If you're wanting to install 200mm fans, you're simply going to remove the plastic clips and secure the fans directly to the rails. And in each corner we've got one of these screws for adjusting the position of the rails. So you can see at the moment it is in the 140/200 mounting slot. So again, 140 fans installed, we use these little clips. For 200mm fans, remove the clips and install them directly to the rails. And if you want to go with 120mm fans, you're simply going to move the brackets to the 120mm fan slot, and you are also going to want to use the plastic clips to mount your fans. Obviously with the 120mm fans, you might need to move these clips down, so you're simply going to unscrew these screws and the clips will move. If you'd rather go with a radiator at the front, the case will support up to a 360 or 280mm radiator here. And you'll notice we've got an ARGB lighting bar just above our front I/O. And you can see we've got another 140mm PWM ARGB fan pre-installed at the back of the case. It is also possible to mount a 120mm fan here, or if you want to go with a radiator, it's either a 120 or 140mm radiator. Up top, the fan support is exactly the same as the front, up to 3 140 or 3 120mm fans, although radiator support is a little bit better here. You can actually fit up to a 420mm radiator at the top of the case. So again, at the top of the case, we've got Corsair's InfiniRail mounting system. So it out of the box is set up for 120mm fans or radiators in multiples of 120. So if you want to go with 140mm fans or radiators in multiples of 140, you're going to have to adjust the position of these rails. So all we need to do is loosen the screws, and then with the screws loosened, we can go ahead and slide the rail into the 140mm position. You'll notice this yellow line lines up with the 140mm mark at the top of the case, and then we just need to tighten the screws. No matter whether you're using 120 or 140mm fans, this time you're going to secure the fans directly to the rails rather than using the white plastic clips. And if you're planning on going for a custom loop, you'll be pleased to see there's a cutout for a fill port at the top of the case. You're going to simply break this panel out, and we've got a drain port on the bottom as well. It is possible to mount fans and radiators on the side of the case, but to do so we're going to have to remove this cover. Just before I show you how to do this, you can see we've got some subtle Corsair branding here. This will clean off if you want to. And then in the case accessory box, we get this large Corsair sticker you can put on if you prefer. So before you remove the panel, just make sure you've freed up all your fan cables from the side. Then we've got a single screw at the top holding the panel in place. With it removed, we're able to tilt the panel backwards, and then we can simply lift it up from the bottom to remove it from the case. Then in the case accessory box, we get this bracket. So you'll notice at the bottom of it, we've got these little clips, and there's holes in the bottom of the case. So we're just going to line the clips up with the holes first of all. They're going to fall into those holes, and then we can simply tilt the bracket up and into place. And then we'll secure the bracket into place at the top with the same screw. So fan and radiator support here is exactly the same as the front of the case, up to 3 120 or 3 140mm fans, or up to a 360 or 280mm radiator. We're also able to mount 2 120mm fans on our power supply side. You're simply going to set your fans into place on the top, and then in the case accessory box we get these long radiator screws. They're going to go down through your fans into the bottom of the case, and you're going to screw them into place. Our final fan mounting slots are at the bottom of the case, so we're going to need to remove this lower mesh panel. So we can remove the captive thumb screw at the back, and then we simply need to tilt the panel out, and then we can lift it forward and away. Taking a look at the back of the panel we've just removed, you'll notice that there's this solid bit of plastic behind it, and the idea behind it, it's going to sort of limit some of the lighting going through it. It is possible to remove this. There's a little tag over here, and we can simply free it up. So if you want, you can leave the panel out and go with just mesh on the side. But you also have two other options. In the case accessory box, you get this mesh dust filter to go on. Or if you want to hide everything at the bottom, you get this solid white panel. So that will stop you seeing your power supply and any lighting from any fans installed at the bottom. Obviously, from an airflow point of view, that is going to limit it, but you've got absolutely loads of airflow at the bottom of the case and on the front and side. So I think this might be the option that I'm going to go for. So this should do a really good job of hiding any cables at the bottom of the case. So on the bottom of the case itself, you are able to mount either two 120 or two 140mm fans. So to access both of the fan mounting slots, we are going to have to remove this drive cage at the bottom. So just loosen the captive thumb screw, and then we can lift the drive cage away. So again, for installing your fans, you're simply going to set them into place at the bottom, and you're going to use the long radiator screws to go down through the fans and secure them into the bottom of the case. You might be wondering how you're going to screw them in with this power supply shroud in place, but it is actually possible to remove the power supply shroud. It's held on with two screws, and then with the two screws removed, we can simply tilt the power supply shroud up and remove it from the case. And see, this is then going to give you access to screw your fans down into place. And if you are wanting to keep the hard drive cage in place at the bottom, you still are going to be able to install one fan in front of it. On the bottom of the case, we've got a full-length dust filter which can be pulled out from the side for cleaning. In terms of motherboard support, the case supports motherboards up to eATX in size, and you can see we do have the additional cutouts required for back connector both ATX and micro ATX motherboards. If you want to go with a CPU air cooler, the maximum height supported is up to 175mm. So you can see over to the right hand side of the motherboard, we've got this nice cable cover bracket. If you're going with an eATX motherboard, you are going to have to remove this bracket. It's held in place at the back with one screw. And then with the screw removed, the bracket is free to tilt forward, and then we just need to lift it up at the bottom. And then we're going to be able to remove it from the case. So you can see with it removed, we've now got additional space over to the right hand side of the motherboard for an eATX motherboard. We've got another cable cover clip at the top, which is going to help hide cables plugging into the top of the motherboard. Again, it's held at the back with one screw, and we're going to be able to tilt the bracket out. Again, free it up at the left hand side, and we're going to be able to remove it from the case. Another really nice touch we get in the case accessory box is this magnetically attached panel, and it's to help tidy up the cutouts to the right hand side of your motherboard. So it simply is going to slot into place here. So the final option we have, it is actually possible to remove the motherboard tray and install your motherboard to it out of the case. So to do this, there's 4 screws at the back we're going to need to remove. So then with the 4 screws removed, we can tilt the motherboard tray into the case. We can then lower it down, and we're going to be able to remove it. And if you want, you're able to install your motherboard to this outside the case. I think I'm happy enough just to leave it in place, install the motherboard directly in the case. So you can see at the rear, we've got 8 horizontal expansion slot brackets, and graphics card support in this case is absolutely massive, up to a maximum length of 450mm. And with such large graphics card support, it's good to see that the case comes with a GPU support bracket. You're simply going to loosen this thumb screw on the end. That's going to free the bracket up, and you're going to be able to slide it up into place to where it supports your graphics card, and then simply tighten up the thumb screw with a screwdriver to hold it in place. Now on some graphics cards, when you install this, this may well catch on your fans. So what Corsair have done, they've included an additional little foam pad. And the idea behind this is you would stick this to the bracket. There's double-sided adhesive, just pull the plastic off on the back. And you're then going to be able to stick this onto the GPU support bracket near the motherboard side. That's then going to sit on the little bit of plastic on your graphics card, giving you a bit of elevation, keeping this away from your fans. So if you are planning to go with an eATX motherboard, you might be worried about losing the GPU support bracket, given that I've already told you you're going to need to remove this panel. but that's not a problem at all. First thing you're going to want to do is remove the GPU support bracket from this panel here. And we'll remove the cable cover bracket as I've showed you before. So in the case accessory box, you're going to get this little bracket here. So all you're going to simply want to do is take the GPU support bracket that you've already taken off, slot it through here, and then you've got this screw to put into place on the back. To secure it, you've got a little clip at the bottom and a screw hole. So just find the right place for your motherboard. Again, it can go any one of these holes here. So we'll just pick this one and we'll secure it into place at the back with the original screw. So there you go, you're still going to be able to use your GPU support bracket. Just move it up to where it supports your graphics card and then tighten up this thumb screw to hold it in place. So what if you want to install your graphics card vertically? Well, it is possible to rotate this bracket around at 90 degrees. There's 3 thumb screws that we're going to need to loosen, and then we're going to be able to tilt the bracket out, pull it out from the clips. You can see we have additional clips down here, so we'll just line the clips up into place at the bottom and then tilt the bracket up and re-secure it with the same 3 thumb screws. So that's what it looks like with the bracket in the vertical position. Next thing to do is install your riser cable. You can see we have 2 different positions to install it in. So you're just going to want to take the 2 standoffs that come in the case accessory box and screw them into the bottom of the case. Then you're going to need to get yourself a riser cable. It's not going to be included with the case. You're going to have to pick it up as an optional extra. And we'll secure this to the standoffs using the screws that came in the bag of the standoffs. If you do want to go with a vertical GPU, you're probably best to wait until you've installed your motherboard and plugged any cables into it, because this is going to get in the way. I do think I'm going to go with a vertical GPU, but rather than uninstall this and reinstall it, probably the easiest thing for me is just to remove our power supply shroud. But that's not only going to keep the riser cable out of the way, but it's going to allow me to install fans at the bottom as well. So moving to the other side of the case, cable routing space looks to be really good, and we've got loads of Velcro cable straps to help manage all our cables. So if we take a look at the back of the tray, you've got all these different holes, and we are able to move these cable clips to any position that we want. So I'm just going to free up the Velcro clip at the top. So to move this clip, we just need to remove this central peg, and then we're going to be able to pull the clip off. If we take a look at the back, you'll notice at the bottom there's a little clip here, and it's going to clip onto a slot below, and then this is going to go through another hole and secure it into place. So for example, if I wanted to move this clip down to here, just slot it into place, push it through the hole, and then re-secure the little peg, and that's going to keep it in place. So behind our motherboard, we've got this multi-purpose bracket. It will accommodate up to 2 2.5-inch drives, and then on this top bit we can either mount a 3.5-inch drive, or if you've got any hubs or controllers, they will attach here magnetically. So to remove the bracket, there's a captive thumb screw at the top, and that's going to allow you to tilt the bracket out. On the other side, you're simply going to set your SSDs into place, making sure you've got the I/O down at the bottom, and then you can secure the drive into place before the SSD screws from the other side. If you'd rather go with a hard drive than a controller here, simply slot your hard drive up into place, and then you can secure the drive to the bracket using the hard drive screws with the rounded head. Then we can just return the drive tray to the bracket. We've got another 2 dedicated 2.5-inch drive mounting brackets beneath this. So they're simply held on at the top with a captive thumb screw. You're simply going to remove the bracket, set your drive into place, and secure it to the back of the bracket in exactly the same way that I've just shown you, and then clip the bracket back into place. And our drive mounting bracket on the bottom of the case is exactly the same as the larger bracket at the back. And on it, we're going to be able to mount up to 2 2.5-inch drives on the underside with a 3.5-inch drive on top. And taking a look down the bottom of the case, there's 3 different positions we're going to be able to install this drive bracket in. So we can install it all the way here, where it's going to limit our power supply. We can also move it along to here, or if we want to install it all the way to the front, this is our last mounting slot, so simply set it into place and secure it with the thumb screw. So in terms of our cables, you can see that our 3 front fans are all connected up together, so just 1 PWM and 1 ARGB cable to plug into our motherboard. We've also got separate cables for our rear fan, again a PWM and ARGB cable, but we do have a little splitter cable here, so we are going to be able to plug an additional device in here if we need to. And it's good to see that all our cables are color matched to the color of the case. Now, importantly, we do have 2 USB 3.0 cables. If your motherboard doesn't have 2 headers, just plug one of them in, but that's going to mean that only 2 of the USB Type A ports in the front of the case are going to work. There's 1 cable for 2 of the ports and another cable for the other 2 ports. So the case supports full-sized ATX power supplies, and these are going to be installed down at the bottom. And take a look down at the back, we've got 2 captive thumb screws to help secure our power supply. So to help with cable management, you can see I've used a couple of cable ties just to manage our cables to our front fan bracket. Then I've just routed the fan cables in with our front panel connectors, so they're going to be coming out here. So I'm going to be using a back connector motherboard for this build, and it looks really clean with all the screw holes hidden. They're hidden behind a range of different covers, so we can pull the covers off. And although there's no screw hole behind this heatsink, we're going to need to remove it to install our M.2 SSD. To open our socket cover, we can push this lever down and out. We'll bring it all the way to the middle of the motherboard, and then we can open our socket cover up. Holding our CPU by the edges and making sure we've got the text the correct way up, we'll lower it carefully down into the socket. And once we're happy it's sitting correctly in the socket, we can go ahead and close the socket cover down again. Then as we close this lever, the white bit of plastic will pop off, and we'll put it into our motherboard box for safekeeping. So our CPU cooler doesn't need these stock clips, so we're going to need to remove them. They're each held on with 2 screws. And we're going to screw our CPU cooler directly into the back plate. We can go ahead and set our M.2 SSD into the top slot, and then as we flatten it down, this clip is going to hold it in place. We need to remove the plastic protection from the heatsink, and then we can replace the heatsink. We're going to be installing a RAM in the 2nd and 4th slot along from the CPU, so we'll go ahead and open the clips on those slots. And then all we need to do is line the RAM up with the slot. And once we're happy everything's lined up, it's just some firm pressure and it's going to clip into place. And it's the same thing with our second stick. Next we can set our motherboard into the case, line it up with the standoffs at the back. And we'll screw the motherboard into place using 8 of the screws with the rounded head from the case accessory bag. And then we can replace our heat sinks and covers. And you'll notice we do have a little gap over to the right hand side of the motherboard, so we're able to take this little magnetic strip, set it into place, and that does do a good job of hiding that gap. And then I'm going to replace the cable covers. You notice I left the GPU support bracket out, and that's because I'm planning to install my GPU in the vertical position. We're now ready to plug in our case cables. Our HD audio connector is going to go into this header here, and we're going to plug it in with the HD audio text facing up the way. We've got an ARGB header here at the bottom of the motherboard, so we'll go and plug our ARGB cable coming from our front fans into here. And next to it we've got a system fan header, so we'll plug the PWM cable from our front fans into it. We're going to plug our front panel connectors into the right hand side of this header here, with the front panel text facing down the way. We have only got one USB 3.0 header on this motherboard, so we're only going to be able to plug one of these cables in, which means 2 of our front USB Type A ports aren't going to work. So I'm going to line the cable up with the header and push into place. So obviously if you've got 2 of these headers in your motherboard, go ahead and plug both cables in. Just above this we've got our front panel Type C header, so we'll go ahead and line our cable up and push into place. We've got another 3-pin 5V ARGB header here, so I'm going to take the ARGB cable coming from our rear fan and get it plugged in. And then we've got another system fan header just above, so we'll take the PWM cable and get it plugged in. So that just leaves us with the ARGB cable coming from that lighting strip just above our front I/O. And our rear fan has a spare connector coming from it, so we can pull the plastic protection off. We'll line them up and push into place. We're now ready to install our power supply, and I've gone ahead and plugged in the cables that we are going to need. So I plugged in our 24-pin motherboard cable. I plugged in a 12V 2x6 cable to power our graphics card. I plugged in a single 8-pin EPS cable to provide additional power to our CPU. And I've also plugged in a 6+2-pin PCIe cable because our AIO hub is going to need PCIe power. So we're going to want to make sure we install our power supply with its intake fan facing down the way. So we'll go ahead and slide our power supply into the case and all the way to the back. And we can secure it into place at the back using the 2 thumb screws. So a really cool thing with the Corsair Shift power supplies is all your cables plug into the side rather than at the end. So if you wanted to add an additional cable in at any point or take them out, you can see all your labels and find out exactly where to plug them in. So our EPS cable is going to go into this header at the top of the motherboard. So it's the one labeled CPU, so we'll just line it up and push into place. And our 24-pin cable is going to go into this header here. So we'll line it up with the header on the motherboard and push into place. Okay, next thing to do is install our case fans, and I've got 5 case fans, 2 for the bottom and 3 for the side. So the first thing we're going to do is join our fans together. So if we take a look at the end of our fans, we've got 2 connectors. It's actually down at the bottom here where the fans are actually going to connect together. and this is just a dummy connector at the top. So in the box with the fans, again, we get two connectors. You can see in here there's actually electrical connectors, whereas this one is just a simple sheet of plastic. So we're going to place the one which has the electrical connectors into the one at the bottom and push it into place. And then the little sheet of plastic we can just push into place at the top. So then if we turn the fans around, they are going to try and connect magnetically. So it's just a matter of lining those connectors up. And once we've got them connected up, we can simply push them into place to lock the two fans together. So each of our single fans comes with a cable to connect the fans to another group. So all I'm going to do is connect this cable into the port on the bottom of the fans. So I'm going to be installing these fans at the bottom set to intake, and if I do it this way, you'll see our Corsair logos are going to be upside down. So I can simply pop these out from the middle and turn them around. So they're going to be the right way up. We can then set our fans into place at the bottom of the case, and to get the fans to line up with the screw holes, we are going to need to give them a good push over because our front I/O cables are in the way. So in the case accessory box, we do get these long radiator screws, but they're designed for standard thickness fans. So if I set one into place, you'll notice that these are actually too small to use with these really thick fans that I've got here. So our fans do come with extra long fan screws. There's two different thread types. The one we want to use, it's flat, and then you've just got the thread down at the end. And we're going to be able to use these to secure our fans to the bottom of the case. So we've got another three 140mm fans which have connected together, and they're going to go on the side also as intake. I've plugged another cable into the connector at the end, and we're going to plug this into our AIO. So into the bottom, I'm just going to daisy chain the bottom fans into our side fans, and then we can set the fans into place on this side of the case. And we'll secure the fans into place on the other side using the screws that came with the case. We're now ready to start work on our AIO, and it's great to see that our fans are pre-installed in the radiator, so one less job to do. You can notice on one side of the fans we've got these clear covers, and on the other side we've got the Corsair logo. Now depending on what side you're going to have the tubes at, you're either going to have the Corsair logo or the clear side. Now I want the tubes coming towards the front of the case, which means at the moment the clear side is on display, and I think I'd rather have the Corsair logo. So all I'm going to do is pull the Corsair logos off, and we'll swap them for the clear covers on the other side. So taking a look at the side of our radiator, we've got a connector here, and we've got this long connecting cable with right angle connectors on both sides. So all I'm going to do is take the cable and plug it into here, making sure we've got the right angle connector running towards the back of the case. And the other end of this cable is going to go into our hub. So on the other end of the fans, we've got another connector, and we're able to daisy chain additional devices into here. So we can simply plug our side fans into here, and that's going to connect them up to our controller. So our pump is also going to need to get connected up to our controller, and we've got this cable right angle connector on one side and straight connector on the other. So we can simply plug this into our pump, and then we're going to be able to plug the other end into our controller. If we turn our pump round and remove the plastic protection, you can see that we've got thermal paste pre-applied to the cold plate, so just take care not to damage that. If you're going with an Intel motherboard, you're ready to go. The Intel bracket is pre-installed, but because we're going to be installing this on an AMD motherboard, we're going to need to remove the Intel bracket. So it just simply pulls off. We can then take our AMD bracket and slide it into place. So just before we install our AIO at the top, I'm noticing that there isn't space for this cable cover bracket on to actually be able to pass the cable cover from our pump through to the back. So I'm just temporarily going to remove the bracket and pass the cable through. Okay, so we'll just leave this up out of the way. The reason is once we put our radiator into place, we're not going to have access to remove this cable cover. So just before we set our AIO into place, I'm going to pass the long cable through to the back, and then we'll set the AIO up into place at the top and secure it using the included short radiator screws. So I was just trying to plug the cable coming from our side fans into that port on our radiator, but unfortunately the cable I've installed is just a little bit too short. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove it. So this is the spare connecting cable that came with the fans, but we also have a spare connecting cable that came with our AIO, which should be perfect in terms of length. So we'll plug one end into the port on our fans, and then the other end into our top fans. And at this stage we can replace our top panel. Next we just need to line our pump up with the bracket on the motherboard, and then we just need to tighten each corner up in turn. We can then bring the longer cable down and we'll get it plugged into our pump. And we've got some plastic protection on the pump. This little cover, if it's not round the right way, you can just simply turn it round to get the Corsair logo up the right way. So we'll just pull the plastic protection off and then we can insert this back on. Then we've just got our hub to connect up. So we take a look at the side. We've got 2 different ports where we can plug our cables into, and into the bottom we've got 3 different ports. So we're going to need to power our hub. So the first port is for our power cable. It's going to push into here, and on the other end we've got a 6-pin PCIe cable, so we're going to plug that into a cable coming from our power supply. So we're going to need to connect this up to our motherboard. So we've got a USB cable to go into the second port, and the other end we're going to plug into a USB 2.0 header on our motherboard, and into the third port we've got a fan cable, and this other end we've got a fan connector which will plug into our CPU fan header. So all I'm going to do is take our 2 cables, so we've got the one coming from our pump, and then we've got our fans, including the fans in the radiator and all our case fans connected up into this one, and then we can set our hub up into place. And this little hub can control up to 24 devices with 12 on each side. So our CPU fan header is this middle one here, so it's just a matter of lining our cable up and pushing into place. We've got 2 USB 2.0 headers here, so we'll plug the cable in with the USB text facing up the way. And last thing to do is power the hub, so we've got our 6-pin PCIe cable and we'll plug it into here. We can then set our power supply shroud into place and we'll secure it into place with the 2 screws. And then we can replace the bottom panel. We can open the clip on our top PCIe slot by pressing the button on the motherboard. We'll remove the plastic protection from our riser cable, and then we just need to line the riser cable up with the slot. And once we're happy everything's lined up with just some firm pressure, and the riser cable is going to clip into place. And then all I'm going to do is flatten the riser cable down. We're going to need to remove the second and third expansion slot cover from the tempered glass panel. Then we can open the clip on our riser cable. We can line our graphics card up with the slot. Now I'm just looking at the position of this. Our graphics card isn't lining up with the slot. The riser cable needs to move very slightly to the right hand side. So we do have a little bit of flexibility on this side, but there's no flexibility on this side of this particular riser cable that I've used. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the screw on the left hand side, and that's going to allow me to slide the riser cable very slightly to the right. So the riser cable is still going to be resting on the standoffs, so it still should do a good enough job of holding things in place. We'll just try this now. So we'll line the graphics card up with the riser cable, and then we'll push down, and it's going to lock into place. And we can secure the graphics card into place with the 2 original thumb screws. We can then bring our 12V 2x6 cable through the cutout at the bottom. We'll line it up with our graphics card and push into place. And then we'll pull our excess cable through to the back. So the only thing I'm not happy with is our AIO tubes, because they are crossing over, they are sitting at quite awkward angles. So I'm going to use some Velcro cable straps to help organize them. So that definitely looks a little better. Okay, last thing to do is some cable management and get the panels back on again. Okay, so that's the build complete, and as you can see, I've gone ahead and got everything set up. If you don't know how to do that, I've made another video that covers setting up a PC after you've built it, and you'll find a link to that video in the description. So in terms of our temperatures, our Ryzen 7 9700X idled at 43 degrees and reached a maximum of 65 degrees under load. The Palit 5070 idled at 41 degrees and reached a maximum of 74 degrees under load. In terms of noise, we had average noise levels of 35 decibels at idle and 41 decibels under load. So I'm not planning on making a separate review for this case. As I've mentioned, I'm saving those just for pre-release versions of the case, and this case has now been out for a few weeks. But in terms of what I think about it, I absolutely love it. It's a nice big case, plenty of space to build in, and loads of really smart options. I love the extra plates they've given here to cover over this so you can't see your fans or power supply cables at the bottom. Absolutely love the little cover plate at the right hand side of the motherboard and the plates at the top to help hide the cables. Particularly with this back connector motherboard, everything looks really clean. And I absolutely love building using the Corsair iLink system. It's my first time using this and it is absolutely amazing. Connect the fans up in whatever order you want, connect the fans in the I/O, connect your case fans, and just simply plug them into the hub. And yet, despite doing that, you're still able to control your pump, your fans in the radiator, and all your case fans individually. So it's a really smart system and made building in this case really straightforward. So hopefully you have enjoyed this full step-by-step PC build guide. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well. Thanks for watching.